Welcome back to Superbly Said Advanced English Vocabulary and Phrases.
And just to set the stage for you right away, the material we're diving into today is drawn directly from a SpeakDuo lesson.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so if you want to take these phrases and actually use them, you can head over to SpeakDuo.com. It's an amazing platform to, meet new people from around the world, practice your English on video calls, and just become way more confident in your speaking abilities.
Absolutely, yeah. And today's deep dive is designed specifically for you advanced English learners out there. We're completely skipping the basics today.
We really are. No time for basics.
Right, because advanced English really proves its value when we use it to describe, those complicated, messy human behaviors, especially all the interpersonal friction we deal with in the workplace.
Oh, definitely. The workplace is basically a gold mine for conflict.
It is. So let's just jump right into it. Say a colleague openly mocks your presentation. What happens next? Well, a lot of people choose to bear a grudge.
To bear a grudge. Yeah, it's a fantastic phrase. The definition here is basically to stay angry at someone long after an incident has actually occurred.
Right.
But to really grasp it, we have to distinguish this from simply being annoyed.
Yeah, because, annoyance is pretty much my default state before I have my morning coffee.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it fades, Annoyance is a reactive, fleeting emotion. It spikes and it drops.
Yeah.
But bearing a grudge, that is an active, sustained refusal to forgive.
Yeah.
It actually takes psychological effort to maintain. You're making a choice to keep that anger alive.
Wow, yeah. I always picture it like carrying a heavy, unwanted backpack from a past trip that you just refuse to unpack.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
Right. You're just dragging this dead weight around with you into every new meeting and every interaction with that person.
And we see the toll this takes at work all the time. Imagine a scenario where, two colleagues have a massive disagreement over a project.
Which happens constantly.
Exactly. And even after management intervenes and an apology is issued, she continued to bear a grudge and avoided him at all the departmental meetings.
So the conflict is technically over on paper.
Right, but she is still lugging that heavy backpack around.
So say you're taking the IELTS exam, right? Specifically part 2 of the speaking test where you have to tell a story. How does using a phrase like this help you?
Well, an examiner is listening for lexical precision. Anyone can say, I was angry for a long time.
So, yeah, that's pretty basic.
Exactly. But a high-scoring candidate might say, I bore a grudge against a friend for months over an unfair accusation before we finally talked it out.
That sounds so much more natural.
It does. Using bore a grudge instantly communicates the duration, the emotional weight, and the stubbornness, all in just 3 words.
And when that heavy backpack of resentment gets to be too much, people usually take it a step further, right? They stop engaging entirely and they shut someone out.
Shut someone out.
Yeah.
Yeah, meaning deliberately excluding someone from your life or your conversations. But let's look at the psychological nuance here.
Okay.
We have to contrast shutting someone out with simply ignoring them. Ignoring someone can be passive. Like, you might just be overwhelmed with emails and forget to reply.
But shutting someone out it's architectural, right? You are building a barricade.
Precisely. It's an intentional emotional defense mechanism. You are actively ensuring they cannot get in.
Right. Like, think about an employee who has a brutal falling out with a coworker who used to be a good friend.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, and after the argument, they shut that old friend out completely. They stop answering calls. They leave the room when the person walks in. The wall is totally up.
And returning to that IELTS context for a second, imagine explaining that dynamic to an examiner, saying, I shut him out temporarily to protect myself until I was ready to talk.
That shows a really deep command of the language.
Exactly. It highlights that the action wasn't just mean, it was a calculated boundary.
But here's where workplace dynamics get really tense. Sometimes you're forced to shut people out because they violate the unwritten rules of the office. Which brings us to a phrase that carries a lot of judgment: to have the gall.
Yes, to have the gall. This means doing something shockingly rude or bold without any sense of shame.
Wait, let me push back on this for a second because, you hear Silicon Valley startup founders telling their teams to have the gall to disrupt industries. Can someone have the gall in a good way? Like, is it just extreme bravery?
It's a deliberate, cheeky reappropriation when startups use it that way. But generally speaking, no. We have to strictly separate this from bravery.
Okay, how so?
Well, bravery is honorable, right?
Yeah.
It's facing fear to achieve a noble goal.
Yeah.
Having the gall implies a shocking lack of respect. It almost always means you're totally shameless.
So it's pure audacity.
Pure audacity. Think about a junior coworker having the gall to loudly criticize a senior director's work in front of the whole team.
Oh, wow. Instead of doing it privately?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or imagine a customer who clearly breaks an item themselves, but then has the gall to scream at the manager for a full refund.
Just a complete lack of situational awareness.
It leaves everyone else in the room completely speechless.
And when someone does have the gall to act like that, a good colleague really needs to step in and stick up for someone. Defend them. Because if you don't, those aggressive behaviors will completely rattle the rest of the team.
Oh, absolutely.
You do not want your entire department feeling unsettled or nervous just because one person won't follow basic etiquette.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to integrate those concepts. Sticking up for someone who's being rattled by a shameless colleague is crucial.
Okay, so that covers how we navigate external friction. But let's pivot and look internally. Sometimes the biggest threat to your career isn't a rude coworker, it's your own mindset. Let's talk about being out of your depth.
To be out of your depth means finding yourself in a situation completely beyond your skills or experience. And the key here is separating it from simply being challenged.
Because we are told constantly to seek out challenges at work, right? Like stretch assignments.
Right, but a challenge assumes you have the foundational skills to at least attempt the task. Being out of your depth means you fundamentally lack the necessary expertise right now.
Like you're literally in deep water and you don't know how to swim.
Exactly. It's the literal origin of the phrase.
It's totally different from imposter syndrome. I've seen people get handed a project like leading a meeting on a completely new technical topic, and they realize they need engineering expertise they just do not have.
They are out of their depth, and it's terrifying.
Everyone can see it.
Yeah, and people often end up out of their depth because of our next phrase, taking something lightly. This means treating an important matter without the seriousness it deserves.
So how does that differ from just, being optimistic under pressure?
Well, optimism is a positive outlook, right? Taking something lightly is a dangerous underestimation of a risk.
Okay, so it's carelessness.
Exactly. For instance, an employee gets warned about a strict deadline, but they take the warning lightly, they don't prepare, they miss it, and they deeply regret it later.
They didn't respect the threat. And honestly, that careless approach leads perfectly into how careers usually stall out. People don't always make one massive mistake. They just sort of drift into something.
To drift into something. This means gradually and passively moving into an unwanted situation. It is the exact opposite of choosing a path.
Right, because choosing implies agency.
Yes. Drifting implies a total lack of intention. You're just letting the current take you.
It's like falling asleep on a floaty in the ocean. It's super relaxing for the first hour, but then you wake up and you're miles from the shore and you have no idea how you got there.
That is a terrifying image, but yes. In a career, it's like an employee who drifted into a job that didn't fit their skills at all, simply because they lacked clear goals.
Just taking whatever promotions were handed to them.
Exactly. Or in an IELTS answer, someone might say, I drifted into that habit of working late every day until I finally had to set boundaries.
The lack of active choice is really the key there. So if drifting is the trap, what's the alternative? How do you take control?
The strategic alternative is to bide your time, meaning waiting patiently for the absolute perfect moment to act.
But wait, a lot of people disguise their procrastination as, waiting for the right moment. How is biding your time different from procrastinating?
It comes down to intent. Procrastination is avoidance. You're hiding from the work. Biding your time is highly strategic and active waiting.
Oh, I see.
You're observing, analyzing, and preparing quietly.
Like an employee who wants a new role, but the company structure is locked. Instead of quitting impulsively, they bide their time. They quietly learn new skills until a suitable role finally opens up.
Exactly. They aren't drifting, they're anchored and preparing.
And once you bide your time correctly, you're ready to take decisive action. Which brings us to the ultimate goal, to break through something.
Yes, to break through something means to successfully overcome a stubborn barrier. And we have to contrast this with simply finishing a task.
Right, because finishing implies it was routine. You checked a box.
Exactly. Breaking through requires conquering significant, stubborn resistance.
So, doing your weekly expense report is finishing a task. But if your team has been trying to close a massive corporate deal for months, facing constant rejections, and you finally get it signed, you broke through.
Yes. Or an IELTS student breaking through a language plateau by practicing daily with native speakers.
And when you break through, you no longer feel downhearted, right? You aren't discouraged by those past disappointments anymore.
Precisely. It allows you to step up and take on more responsibility. Even if your office environment is stuffy, old-fashioned and stiff, you learn to hang on to your values.
Yeah, and you can draw attention to important issues by communicating clearly.
It's a full professional transformation.
It really is. Now, we've covered a lot today. So, to help you lock in these advanced phrases, we're going to do a quick quiz. I'll read the question and three options: option A, option B, and option C.
Pay close attention to the nuance on these.
Definitely. And feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer before we reveal it. Ready? Question 1. Which scenario best describes an individual who bears a grudge? Option A. Formally acknowledging a mistake to improve future performance. Option B. Maintaining a feeling of resentment long after a past incident. Option C. Deliberately ignoring a colleague to avoid some heated argument. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
So the correct choice is option B. An individual who bears a grudge is actively maintaining a feeling of resentment long after the incident. Just like that coworker we discussed who continued avoiding their colleague at meetings even after the apology.
Right. Okay. Question 2. What is the primary objective when a person decides to bide their time? Option A. Patiently waiting for the opportune moment before taking action. Option B. Rapidly accelerating a project to meet some very narrow deadline. Option C. Carefully analyzing some data to predict certain outcomes here. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option A. When you bide your time, you are patiently waiting for the opportune moment before taking action. Think back to the strategic employee who learned new skills quietly until that right role opened up.
Exactly. Question 3. What does it signify if someone is said to have the gall to act? Option A. Proposing a logical solution to a very complex logistical error. Option B. Expressing a sincere apology for a minor professional oversight. Option C. Behaving with shocking boldness or a lack of respect for people. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
That would be option C. To have the gall signifies behaving with shocking boldness or a lack of respect. Remember the audacious coworker criticizing someone in front of the whole team or asking for a refund for the item they broke?
The absolute worst. Okay, question 4. Which behavior identifies a professional who takes a warning lightly? Option A. Treating a significant issue without the required level of care. Option B. Measuring the physical weight of an object with precise scales. Option C. Providing a concise summary of a long and complicated document. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
It is option A. And obviously, we aren't talking about physical scales here. Someone who takes a warning lightly treats a significant issue without the required level of care, just like the person who missed the strict deadline because they didn't treat it seriously.
Yeah, big mistake. Question 5. In a team environment, what occurs when you shut someone out? Option A. Resolving a heated conflict through open and honest discussion. Option B. Deliberately excluding an individual from vital communications. Option C. Closing a heavy door to prevent unauthorized people from entry. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The correct answer is option B. When you shut someone out, you are deliberately excluding an individual from vital communications. We saw this with the person who stopped answering calls from an old friend after a big argument.
Building that barricade. Question 6. How would you describe an employee who is out of their depth? Option A. Successfully navigating a complicated and hazardous environment. Option B. Managing a difficult task that exceeds one's skill or expertise. Option C. Swimming in deep water without using any protective safety gear. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
That is option B. An employee who is out of their depth is dealing with a task that exceeds their baseline skill or expertise. Like the professional asked to lead that technical meeting without the required engineering background.
So stressful. All right, question 7. What has a department achieved if they break through a plateau? Option A. Forcing an entry into a secured building during a sudden crisis. Option B. Damaging a fragile piece of equipment due to a lack of training. Option C. Overcoming a significant barrier to achieve a meaningful result. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The answer is option C. To break through means overcoming a significant barrier to achieve a meaningful result. It's the team finally closing that tough deal or the student conquering their language plateau.
Love that feeling. Last one, question 8. What happens when a career professional drifts into a bad habit? Option A, passively moving into a problematic situation without intention. Option B, intentionally choosing a career path based on personal interest. Option C, rapidly navigating a vehicle through a series of narrow corners. Feel free to pause the podcast here if you need to think about the answer.
The final answer is option A. When someone drifts into a bad habit, they are passively moving into a problematic situation entirely without intention. Just like the person who found themselves working late every single day simply because they didn't set boundaries.
Right. And getting these precise nuances down is what truly separates an intermediate learner from an advanced speaker.
It really is. And before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. Take a look at your current professional trajectory. Are there areas in your life right now where you are passively drifting into the routine? And if so, where could you start strategically biding your time so that you can eventually break through?
That is a phenomenal question to reflect on. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today, and we wish you all the absolute best on your English learning journey. See you next time.